Despite my best efforts of not trying to get too many snakes this year, it kind of went off the rails, and we'll just say that. There were a few that I did specifically seek out, either because they were pairs that I wanted to get, certain projects for individual morphs and different species, as well as just really cool species that I would love to be able to get into, as well as animals that I think would make very good educational animals. And then there were quite a few that just kind of fell into place. Either they were surrendered to me, or someone thought that they might make a good animal ambassador, or potentially even some that just were too good of a deal to just walk away from. I have the space. It's progressing a little bit faster than I would have liked to, so that pretty much halts everything I'm doing for the rest of the year between the time that I'm recording this and then a couple little things that I have in the process of. And that'll probably be it for the rest of the year, maybe being able to pick something up at Tinley. But I really don't want to get any more animals this year between just the amount of time and effort that it takes to quarantine properly, as well as, you don't want to get too many animals than what you're capable of taking care of or having places to put them. It's just not a very good practice, and I certainly don't ever want to, advocate for it or be a bad example of it as well, even though I'm a little bit right now. But I'm owning it, so we're going to go with that. But anyway, every single one of the animals I'm going to be showing today, because essentially animals are coming out of quarantine, were animals that back at the end of December I actually got the very first one that went into quarantine. But as I have preached multiple times, every time you get a new animal into your quarantine room, that time starts over. And so I always quarantine for at least 3 months for all snakes, and then at least 6 months for boas. Now, over the course of this period, there were a couple boas that I did in fact get, and they won't be coming out today because they are still in quarantine. I keep them for that long, as well as I do several IBD tests for rhinovirus tests, including bondage disease, for all of my boas. So they are still in quarantine. They're still doing fine, but they're still going in there, so they're not coming out today. So essentially, every single one of these animals was acquired between the end of December and now the end of June, which honestly is still more than I really thought it was going to be, but I'm going to talk a little bit about them. But without further ado, let's show you some really cool snakes.
So, to start things off with, this is a really cool species of snake that I don't know if I'm ever going to make it into a pair. It's just really cool. This is a white oaks gray rat snake. So if you guys checked out my video about all the different North American rat snakes, I talked a little bit about the gray rat snakes that are incredibly highly variable to be where they can be very dark, almost black like the black rat snakes, as well as they also have a coloration where it's very bright white with a little bit darker coloration, and that pattern is called the gray oaks. And so this little guy, who was born very similar to like a lot of the little rat snakes, as he gets older, the lighter silver that makes up the majority of his body is going to get very pale, almost white, and then those saddles are going to remain, and they're even going to fade a little bit. So it'll be a really cool, like nice little corn snake, maybe a little bit larger sized rat snake that'll be this really amazing, cool locality / color phase rat snake that'll make an amazing, amazing educational animal. All right. This girl, who we're working on handling, I got for a very specific reason. So this is a scaleless corn snake, pretty obviously. And I know, excuse me, I'm getting over, I don't know what it is. I don't know if I have allergies or getting over a cold. I thought I was over my little summer cold, but maybe not. A lot of people have very strong opinions about scaleless snakes, and all of them are very valid. But this is not the video this isn't the video to talk about scaleless snakes. But they do make a really cool education animal. And this girl, unfortunately, I had another one that was really dark, like a really dark Abbott's okatee, but it was really young, and unfortunately it failed to thrive. So I got this girl, who is a little bit larger, has a little bit more size on her, but still very finicky. We're still working on handling until, she's not exactly the best educational animal yet, but she's still a little small, still getting some size on her, and we're working on that. And actually, every time that I take her out, and now that she's out of quarantine, I'll be able to do so even more now. Her handling is getting a lot better. If you look, you can tell that she still has that corn snake belly where she still has the belly scales, and there's a couple like little odd ones here and there across her belly. Like if you look, give me your butt, please. You can see the little bit of scalation right there on her tail. But she's really cool. I greatly look forward to working with her again. Again, excuse me. I do have a scaleless Texas rat snake or Western rat snake, whatever we want to fight about today. And she works pretty well, but she is a little finicky and a little small for a Western rat snake too, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I always find that when I'm doing educational videos and educational outreach programs, to always kind of have a backup in case your animals are in shed or they're in feed or they're just not having it that day. Because as a whole, I try not to make my animals do stuff that they don't really want to, with the exception of like, a really bad, dirty, messy cage. Then they're getting yanked out because you can't have them getting sick like that. But with that being said, we'll continue right along. Just really like this little girl. This one is just the only new ball python edition. I have really dialed back on the ball pythons because as cool as they are and as much great pets as they are, I do like to work with other species. And so realistically, I'm only getting ball pythons that I either really like or projects that I want to get into or I need pairs for. And so this girl, who doesn't have a name yet, maybe you guys can throw some comments down below. I usually try for the ball pythons to stick with national parks or like cool nature stuff. But this girl is a black pastel het orange ghost. This is hopefully going to be a partner for Puerto Rico or Rico, our Enchi ghost. Theoretically, he is an orange ghost, but there are a couple different variants of hypo out there that aren't necessarily compatible, although most are. We do have another hypo, but those two always seem to almost combat, but they do lock, so I don't know. Maybe they were missexed, I'm not really sure, but hopefully this one can be paired to Rico. Maybe we can get black pastel Enchi orange ghosts, which would be really, really cool. Okay, so this one is really funny. I joked about this with a couple of different people, but this is from when I went to Tinley for the spring show. This is an Abbott's okatee corn snake, and so essentially what that describes originally were the area that they were originally found, but now it mostly just kind of references those very dark blotches. The very dark outline around their blotches is usually what's referred to as an okatee these days. And I absolutely love this guy's pattern here. This is a male, supposedly. And I just thought this is one of the nicest okatee corn snakes that I've seen. I've always really liked them. I like corn snakes. I never plan on breeding them, but I do really like them. I think they make amazing pets and great educational animals. And so getting one of these guys was something that I really couldn't walk away from because it was a really great deal, especially after talking to the guy for a little while. They gave me a really good deal about him, and because mostly it's for educational purposes. But I drove 18 hours from down here, already 3.5 hours from Denver. I ended up driving 18 hours to go pick up some reed frogs and a corn snake from Tinley, which was hilarious. But that's okay. I still had a really good time, and I'm greatly looking forward to watching this guy grow and become an amazing educational animal and animal ambassador. This is the last corn snake, I promise. So out of the corn snake morphs, I think that they're really cool, but I don't want just a bunch of corn snakes, but there are a couple morphs that I do really like. The Scaleless for educational purposes, the okatee because I think it looks really cool, anery, charcoal shatter, those type of things. But this other one I really like with this very long striping and kind of crazy busy pattern is called tessera. And so the tessera pattern, that's kind of a bit of a debate in the corn snake world, where a lot of people think that don't do that on camera, don't do that. A lot of people think that they crossed that California king snake, essentially making a jungle corn hybrid to a corn snake to get this pattern, and it carried on in the corn snakes. This is actually what a caramel tessera corn snake. I believe it is a male, looking at its tail. I'm not really sure. I'm absolutely terrible at sexing colubrids, and once it gets a little bit older, I will do my best about that. But I do really like this tessera morph. And obviously, still a little noodle. The little noodle ones are a little bit more finicky and defensive. We are going to also work with this to be another amazing animal ambassador. This will probably be the last corn snake I get for a very long time, unless another one is essentially surrendered or given to me. The only other exception might be like maybe a palmetto, because I think those are really cool. Now, this girl who just decided to go take a dip in the water, so she's all nice and wet now. This is a Thayeri, or a Sierra Leone, or a Thayers, or a whole bunch of other crazy different names for a king snake. I believe this phase is called the Sierra Leone phase, and there's a lot of variability even in this. So obviously the variable king snake, they come in a wide variety of colors. I actually already have a pair of these guys, and they are the milk snake phase. So essentially that's the black, yellow, and red coral snake mimic color phase of these guys. And supposedly they're het melanistic, but I haven't paired them. I might be doing that this year. I might be able to brewmate them properly this year. But I decided to get this girl just to maybe divvy it up a little bit. The other milk snake was attacked by a cat, and there's a little bit of damage to her, the back of her tail. So there's unfortunately, a little bit of a cloaca issue with her. So we got this girl potentially to be a breeder. Although, as I'm looking at her right now, I did not notice this because she's actually been a really slow grower. King snake was not wanting to eat. There is actually a little kink right here by her vent. If you look, there's this little kink right here. You can see that. A lot of times kinks are caused by incubation issues, but with a kink or a spinal deformity this close to the vent, that is something that I would not risk the health of this animal to breed. So turns out, guess I have another animal ambassador, education animal, because yeah, we're not going to breed her. So hey, we're discovering new things together right now. She was, like I said, a very trouble eater. Got her actually back in January, but because she was never eating consistently, I kept her in quarantine just in cases. But she's recently started to eat a little bit better, which means she'll also probably be a little small as well. That can be caught up later in life a little bit. But now, that being said, it's not as much of an issue because obviously we're not breeding this little girl. But that being said, that's okay. Still got her, still committed to her. We're going to keep her, and we're going to have some fun doing educational programs and videos down the road. So, this guy here is actually one of the more recent acquisitions, but he was actually in a local shop here. Well, local, I should say. It's still like 2.5 hours away. But every time I would go into the shop to like pick up stuff for different people that need them, running through town on my way back from Denver or somewhere, I would see this in the shop for a considerable amount of time. Hopefully I don't sneeze on camera here. And I always kept going, ooh, I want it. They actually had a pair, but they were a related pair, which kept me from getting them until one of the last times that I rolled through, they had sold the other one, the female of this species, but the male was kept off of the display. It was kind of like in the back in a little rack. So you could see the label of it and inquire, but you couldn't really see it that well. But this is the male, which theoretically will actually even get a little bit larger and a little bit prettier. We'll see about that. I'm still learning more and more about these guys. But they finally convinced me to take him because I was really trying. I promise, guys, trying not to get so many snakes. That being said, this is over almost a 7-month period at this point. But this guy here is a male eastern fox snake. So as previously mentioned with the gray oaks, I did a whole video about the different North American rat snakes. May have missed a couple here and there, but the fox snakes, I think, are one of the coolest species of rat snakes here in North America. These guys, again, are really weird. They're almost like a little hybrid of like if a bull snake and a rat snake had a love baby. But these guys are naturally occurring, and there's two different subspecies, the easterns and the westerns. Traditionally, it was said that the Mississippi divided their range, but we're finding out that that's not true. But the coloration on him and where he was found, and no, he's not blowing bubbles. He was also in the water. I moved other tubs over here, and so a lot of them got a little bit wet. So no, that's not him with the respiratory infection. That's just water on his face. But he is an eastern fox snake. And so what I mentioned before about him being like a bull snake, rat snake love baby, if you look at his scalation, all bull snakes, the Pituophis, have keeled scales similar to a rattlesnake scale, where they're a little bit harder, they're different shaped, and they have like a little ridge in the center of it. These guys also have keeled scales, but it's not quite as extreme. And so they feel almost like a softer bull snake with more of like a placid rat snake's attitude. They're fairly decent sized. They're a little bit heavier bodied rat snakes, so a little bit heavier body than say like a corn snake. They still can get about 5-ish feet long. I've never heard of one exceeding 6 feet, but again, these aren't kept as commonly because they don't really have morphs. They just mostly have colorations. There might be a couple locality specific colorations that they might be getting into with like different counties and stuff, But that being said, this is just an amazing species of snake, and I look forward to doing an actual full species spotlight of this guy a little bit down the road, and I will be keeping an eye out for a girlfriend for him as well, because I'd love to be able to actually produce these guys. So I've been very quiet about these ones. One of these, because I got a pair, unrelated. This one came from Tinley. The other one came from a shop back in December, actually. No, January. It's back in January. I can't remember. Whenever the El Paso show that I did was. It's been that long. But this is a male black milk snake. My Patreon subscribers have known about this for a little while, but I have kept these guys under wraps. So the black milk snake is the world's largest / longest milk snake species that very often average lengths over 6 feet in length. As they get old, so when they're born, they're a little bit darker and a little bit more blended, as you can see here with his scalation, where it's not super clean. There's a lot of black going on that red in his saddles. As they get older, as they shed, just like with the IMG boas, they get darker and darker and darker until they turn almost sometimes a pure black. So essentially they'll end up looking like a giant Mexican black king snake, or like a small like blue Texas indigo or something like that. These guys are really cool, amazing feeders. Now that they're out of quarantine, I can be able to work with them and handle them a little bit more. As you can see, he's very squirmy. When they're in quarantine, I don't work with them a whole lot. I just monitor their health and make sure that they're eating, pooping, doing all of their stuff. And now I actually get to work with all these snakes, so I'm very excited. I have the female that I'll show you in just a second, and then another one that I actually have already introduced you guys to. Here is the female. As you can see, she's a little bit larger, a little bit darker. Supposedly this girl comes from lines that are a little bit darker. Some of them had really weird aberrant patterns that may or may not hold through as she gets older. They usually lose most of the yellow, but sometimes it'll still hold through a little bit. If you look on the bottom, she's pretty black underneath, but she is getting darker as she gets older. This is going to be a really, really amazing snake as she gets older. I'd love to be able to produce these one of these days, but that's still a few years away, because we all know I like to slow grow my snakes. But king snakes do grow pretty quickly if you let them, without a whole lot of harm done to them, not to say like a boa constrictor or something like that. But that being said, these guys are really cool, and I'll absolutely do a species spotlight on these guys as well as they get a little bit older. And now that I have this, as well as some pictures from when I very first got them, I'll have a really nice progression as they get older. So in a year, maybe when I do the species spotlight on these guys, it's going to look really, really cool. Or heck, maybe I'll even run into somebody that lets me film with their adults, and then you'll get it a little bit sooner. But these guys are such a cool species of snake. All right, so last one. Okay, so I'm going to do my best not to get another bite on video today. She's still a little nippy. So as anyone who watched my video, this is Rita, Right Eye Rodriguez. She was given to me by Top Line Constrictors, really great local breeder in Denver. Do a lot of really cool boa morphs and species. She actually has a lot of het, so some genetic potential, but with that one eye, we don't want to breed her. So she was given to me as an animal ambassador, and we are going to be working with her more. I've already worked with her a little bit more than the other ones, because she is very specifically an animal ambassador, and baby rainbow boas can be fairly nippy. But Colombian rainbow boa, so I don't know. Yeah, the shine isn't as great with the lighting in here, but just almost as iridescent as the Brazilians, just not that bright red rainbow color that the Brazilians have. But this girl is still really cool, and I greatly look forward to, once she gets a little bit size and a little bit more comfortable with people, she'll be a great animal ambassador, because I feel like there's certain animals that everybody needs when they're the weird guy with the snake that do the shows, which is, they need a lizard, they need a big tortoise, they need a one-eyed snake, and then they need the big yellow snake. I'm kind of lacking on that one, between Yang being unable to travel and Fiero being genetic nightmare. But I do have Cupcake, which is still pretty cool. She's still really big, so I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll get another giant yellow snake or something really cool. But with that being said, here are all the snakes that are coming out of quarantine right now. More are coming in very shortly. Not nearly as many. And that'll be pretty much it for the day. So if you want to find out a little bit more about what those are, you can check out my Patreon. Sorry, shameless plug. But I do appreciate people supporting me. You'll get kind of a preview about what's going on as well as new acquisitions a lot of time, unless I'm being super, super cheeky. But that being said, I'm going to get all these guys put away into their new enclosures here in the main snake building and work on some more videos for everybody. And I'm going to do my best not to sneeze on camera. Oh my gosh! Again, hopefully you enjoyed this video. You don't think that I'm getting too many snakes at once. This really was a little bit out of the norm. But I am greatly looking forward to all of these different animals. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll check you next time.